Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace,
And I'm Blake.
and this is a Spawn Daily episode. We're going to be talking about the first four issues of Curse of the Spawn. Now, we've talked about plenty of issues of Curse of the Spawn, so you might be asking yourself, well, have you talked about all these other issues of Curse of the Spawn, and now you're finally getting to Curse of the Spawn 1 through 4? Well, that's because we don't necessarily read all the tangential stuff in the order it was published or the order it was released. We use Blake's reading order, which puts things where it makes the most sense in terms of chronologically. And, sometimes there's flashbacks and we do medieval Spawn stuff and all that kind of awesome, awesome stuff. So keep in mind that if you want to check out the reading order, there's a link in the show notes to the Google Doc where Blake has meticulously put together this reading order. Your mileage may vary. Not every reading order is always the same. He's done the best to his ability of where he thinks stuff will fit. And there's even little notes and explanations about why things are where. I think it's the best reading order. Believe me, I looked extensively when I was reaching Spawn number 50, and this is the best one out there. Trust me. But anyway, you want to check it out. Link in the show notes. You can go and read it. We're going to be talking about Curse of the Spawn 1 through 4, as I said, and this is a flash forward. And a lot of I'm just going to come around and say a lot of Terminator influences here. At least I felt like for me. If there's any, and I love the Terminator, and I love this idea of humans against machines and whatnot, and obviously Spawn is urban horror with a lot of supernatural stuff and magic and demons and heaven and hell and all that undead kind of stuff. But kind of going along in that idea of a post-apocalyptic world, machines have taken over or whatnot. We don't lean that far in, but we see plenty of these demonic creatures that are melding technology into them, where they've got metal, or they're robotic, or they're cybernetic in some way. So again, that really helped, at least in my mind, to really push this Terminator influence that I felt was there. And I'm not sure, maybe it's because I've only read this once, and we'll give Blake a chance to give his opinion. He's obviously read it more than once, but for me, where the story falls down a little bit, and again, I still enjoyed it because it's this big, crazy story with a lot of cool ideas. The problem is it's so big in scope, which isn't inherently bad, but like a lot of the Curse of the Spawn stuff, when you go that big without enough backstory, or in the case of this one, it's so big, there's a lot of different characters and moving parts, and at times it was hard to keep them all straight in my head. Like, we've got this new Spawn. He kind of looks like a Spawn, and he's sort of the main character. And so his stuff I could kind of keep straight in my mind, except there are flashbacks, and it's not always easy to tell when it's a flashback and when it's not. But then we have this other soldier named Abel who is transformed in some way. We have a demon called Abaddon. We have a Malbolgia stand-in who apparently is even more powerful than Malbolgia, because I think Malbolgia rules the ninth level of hell.
It kind of jumps back and forth between the 8th and the ninth. So it's kind of, flavor of the week. Maybe it's 8th this week. Maybe it's ninth that week.
Well, this guy, to prove how powerful he is, he says, I don't care about 8th or ninth. I'm up on the 12th level, son. What's up? Right. So this guy clearly more powerful. Time has gone by. Now there's more levels of hell. We're on the 12th level now where this demon. So there's a lot of different moving parts. And I know there's other ones. There's the other guy that has the mechanical stuff that crawls around on him. Brune. So there's a lot of different characters here. And then we have some human characters. Again, it's a big cast to just be thrown into in 4 issues and try to keep it all straight. But again, I'm thinking with subsequent reading order or subsequent readings of it, if I go back and reread it, I'll probably have a better idea. But going into it cold, it's just, man, I felt like it was a lot. But
It is a lot. It's very abrasive because we've, for the most part, stuck very modern. And that's
mhm.
where the majority of the series lives, is in our present day time. But this is such a departure from that. It's so far forward, and we don't exactly have all the context for how things got the way they did. And honestly, this 4 or technically 5 issue arc, because the conclusion for this story, and in a manner of speaking, the conclusion for kind of the Curse of Spawn anthology series, is a one-shot. called Blood and Salvation, and we'll get to that later. Uh, but this little arc here, this dark future arc, uh, it's so far ahead. Like, what is real, what is not real? It kind of rides the line of not actually being canon with the rest of the events of the series because it's so far forward. Can you really hold anything too concretely here? Don't take it too seriously. Just kind of think of this as just an alternate version of familiar concepts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I do find it interesting. Obviously, this came out, way before the latest Terminator movie, but Dark Future, the latest Terminator movie was called Dark Fate. I'm sure
Hmm.
one had nothing to do with the other, but
That's right.
similar,
That's right.
yeah, similar
It's kind of
names.
a
So
yeah.
yeah, there's all kinds of Terminator tie-ins for this story. So let me get this out of the way. Okay, so as you can see, sharing my screen, see the front cover there of this newish Spawn. Looks quite different than spawns we've seen before than Al Simmons or Medieval Spawn. And let me get that centered for you. And we can see the creative team there. It's pretty standard, the creative team you've come to know from Curse of the Spawn. So Alan McElroy is writing the story, Dwayne Turner on pencils, Danny Miki on inks, Tom Orzechowski on letters. We've got Todd Broeker and Roy Young this time, with special thanks to John Gordon on colors. And we're basically introduced to this future world, right? The Armageddon has happened. The four horsemen have shown up on Earth. This is the end times, whatever you want to call it. Damnation given form is the way McElroy puts it. But the end times have come. The war between heaven and hell is now occurring on Earth. There's all these demons and supernatural creatures that are out there hunting humans, and there's very few humans left. And those that are left trying to survive the best way they can, try to find food, try to find water, try to hide from not only the demons, but also these necro soldiers called nightmares that are out there trying to destroy the last of humanity as well. And they're the ones that really remind me of the machines. So we meet a couple of these survivors. It's a woman who, along with her son, and the woman's name is, I'm drawing a blank on it all of a sudden, Madrid, that's right. Yeah, and along with her son, Matt, she's a pretty capable fighter, but she remembers the times before the end times, but her main concern is just keeping her son safe. And so in this first issue, we see them attacked by some of the nightmares. We see her take them out with this weapon of hers called a spinner, where she vaporizes the nightmare, and kind of giving us an idea of how formidable of a fighter she is. Then we check in on New Vatican City, and this is kind of what I was referring to during the last episode about the whole idea of this conspiracy, this long-running thought that the Catholic Church is corrupt, and just because supposedly they do the will of God doesn't mean that they're good people. And in New Vatican City, we meet the anti-pope, and he's the one who's feasting on the spoils of Armageddon and really is apparently in charge of these necro soldiers and whatnot that are ravaging the last of humanity. So we're not always 100% privy to his thoughts or his motivations of why he does what he does, and that's kind of what I was saying, why this isn't as fleshed out as it could be, but it's a big story with a lot of moving parts. So there's a lot of context in this first issue in terms of just kind of establishing the world and kind of the setting, if you will, and that's what you see here on the page opposite of the anti-pope, with some kind of creature chewing on some guy who's still alive. He's screaming out, "Oh, God, help me." So we then check in on Madrid and Matt again, and this time they're being attacked by an APC, an armored personnel carrier, and it's also filled with these necro soldiers, and there's some other soldiers that are human soldiers that are fighting against it, and one of the guys gets burned alive right in front of them. He's screaming out, "Help me, help me," when this other creature comes out of the wreckage, and it's known as the Desiccator. And this is what I was talking about with this idea of melding these demonic necro creatures with all this technology, because you can see he's got like a robotic arm, he's got all these kind of bone tentacles coming off of him, but he's also got like a shoulder-mounted Gatling gun and a bandolier, and it's really kind of a cool looking design from Dwayne Turner here. So as this guy who's on fire is dying, this desiccator goes in. This is where he gets his name, and he sinks in his kind of bone tentacles into this guy, and he says something about we can't waste any of these fluids. You know, water is really hard to come by in this post-apocalyptic world, and apparently these necro creatures need water to survive as much as humans do. And so he sucks all of the moisture out of this guy until he's nothing but a desiccated, dried out husk, and that's where this thing gets his name. You know, the desiccator, as he's kind of living off of this this guy who was about to die. So then he turns his attention toward Madrid and Maddie, and kind of fires at them, and is kind of forcing them to go where they want them to go, where they can capture them next. So once he has them cornered, just as he's about to attack them, a new hellspawn rises, right? We see him pop up out of the ground here, and interesting coloring. He's, rather than being like this bright red and green, the green is still there to some extent, but instead of red, you get this darkish purple color, which I think really works, especially when you're trying to darken things up for a post-apocalyptic world. And we get a lot of exposition here from McElroy, just talking about the state of mind of this, how he's charred down to the bone, and he's emotional, and there's anguish, and he's in pain, and his soul has been shattered. And as he pops up out of the ground, he remembers his childhood as he's facing the desiccator here. The desiccator's reminding him of his abusive father, who used to beat on him and his sister and his mother, and whoever this spawn is in life, when he was a little boy, picked up a weapon and killed his father. And so he's reminded of that as he's reborn, if you will. So in that way, just as he protected his sister and his mother from his father, he's going to protect this mother and son from the desiccator. So it's a great full page splash here of this new spawn jumping out at the desiccator as the desiccator's Gatling gun is spinning, and a little bit of a fight here. Looks pretty cool. Spawn is screaming out vengeance. He wants to get retribution, and he does. He takes out the desiccator. So once he does that, the boy is ready to trust him, but Madrid, the mother, is like, you know, just because he killed the desiccator doesn't mean he won't kill us too. But when this spawn looks at the boy, he says, wait, you have a son? Wait, don't you know me? Like, there's a connection right away. There's this idea that there's a connection, at least between the boy and Spawn, if not the mother as well, if not Madrid. So we're just not really sure what that connection might have been or might be. But before we even get an idea of what it might be, all of a sudden the Spawn freaks out and yells up at the sky, thinking about his memories and about the world. And he says, what have I done? Like, is it his fault the world is the way that it is? So it's not really clear, but that's the way that the issue ends. But what I will say is this design of this Spawn by Dwayne Turner is fantastic. Like, even the silhouette, like, I love, let me get to the page where you kind of see him in the background here in this panel, above the panel with the mother and son's faces, where you can kind of see how he has the blades coming up from behind his back. I mean, that silhouette, and you'll see it again in the next issue, or actually you can see it right there next to Desiccator when he's hanging upside down. It's just a really cool silhouette that he has, on top of, when you look at that last page and you get a close-up of his face, how he looks a little bit more demonic, a little, you would almost say Terminator-like, with, you know, not having cheeks or whatever, when you see a Terminator without its flesh on. So yeah, visually, this is a very interesting issue. I understand why they made the coloring choices that they made. It's very dark. It's very murky. I wouldn't mind if it was a little less so, only because it would make the art stand out a little more, but again, I don't think it would suit the right tone for the book of how dark they're trying to go with the story. So I understand why they did it. It's just selfishly, I wish that things were differentiated a little bit more, but a lot of gray and a lot of black. So sometimes some of the detail gets lost. I think it gets blended in, but all in all, it was an intriguing start, but we don't have a lot of answers, and we've had a lot of stuff thrown at us in only one issue. So thoughts on this one, Blake?
Yeah, lots of really solid world building. It's an introduction to this new setting. I like to think of this issue a lot like the very first issue of the whole shebang of Spawn. It has a mystery kind of at its core. Clearly, there's a relationship somewhere between Madrid, Matthew, and this new hellspawn, and we're not explicitly told in this first issue what it is, but it suggests more. He's a really cool, badass demon that is fighting other demons for some reason. And, what is his motivations? What's his goals? Clearly, he's a protector. He wants to help people. We saw in his background that, his father was abusive and he was trying to protect his family. So he's willing to resort to violent measures in order to, save innocent people. And, he's just a cool hellspawn. He's one of my favorite hellspawn designs because he looks like he's decked out in battle armor, like he's ready and made for battle with the blades and the spikes and everything. His symbiote is not the same as what we're familiar with from the main series. So it's just interesting to see a different kind of hellspawn. But yeah, very much an introduction to just the world and this setting. We don't get a ton of story here.
Yeah, I agree about the design. He looks fantastic. So, all right, let's move on. Issue number 2, you get a better look at him. His cape does look a little more red here as opposed to the purple that we saw in the first issue. But either way, a really great cover from Dwayne Turner with the skulls on the ground and a good look at both this new hellspawn as well as like the blades that pop up behind him and his cape and whatnot. So credits on inside the first page there. Alan McElroy on story. Dwayne Turner does the pencils. Danny Miki on inks. Copy, editor, and letter. Tom Orzechowski. Todd Broeker and Roy Young on colors with a special thanks to John Gordon. So as we launch in here, it starts with a flashback. And we're told that there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of blood, flashes of death, flashes of anger. And this man who was once known as Daniel Lanzo has spent a lot of time in different prison facilities. This one happens to be the Demos prison facility. And what doesn't kill him just makes him stronger. He's put up with a lot of abuse and anguish in his time. Now, this Daniel Lozano, he's the same one that was the same little boy that took out his father, that killed his father. So, that's what they mean when they're talking about this legacy of abuse. So you turn the page and it's like, wait, what? This is the part where I'm like, I didn't quite get it. It looks like some sort of starship is about to crash into Earth. And again, it's Daniel Lozano, and you can see him there in his suit. It's on fire. He's been betrayed. He sealed his fate. The Earth below is about to have its innocence stripped away by Lozano's cargo. So, but I wasn't 100% sure. Like, so am I to understand that Lozano is the one that is responsible for Armageddon starting on Earth?
I think so. It's kind of implied that way, that, during an escape attempt from one of these prisons, from the Demos prison, that something went wrong, like something happened while he was mid-flight and that he crashed into Earth, because it appears like if people watching the YouTube video, will be able to see, but for the listeners, it looks like a comet, like he's completely burst into flames, and as he's approaching Earth, it looks like, the Earth is going up in flames as he's crashing into it. So I feel like that's kind of the implication, is that somehow he crash lands and it ignites, some kind of like apocalyptic event that, kind of triggers this new Armageddon that this kind of stand-in for Malbolgia. His name's really hard to pronounce. It's Flegethanyar or something like that. It's a big one. Flegethanyar.
Yeah.
He's
Flegethanyar. Yeah, I think that's how you say it. But the thing that got me is the line is Daniel Lozano has been betrayed, sealed his own hideous fate and the earth below. Its innocence about to be stripped away by Lozano's fetid cargo. So it felt like whatever, I thought they would come back to this at some point in the story and explain that maybe there was some sort of talisman or artifact or something that Lozano was carrying in the cargo hold of the ship that he's using to return to Earth from the Deimos prison, that was a way for Flegethanyar to come to Earth. Like maybe Flegethanyar has been trapped as well on Deimos in some way, so where this artifact needs to be returned to Earth so that he can then, start Armageddon, start the final battle, start the apocalypse, whatever you want to see. Because again, if you're checking it out on YouTube, the page there, that the ship that's burning up on reentry with Flegethanyar's big giant mouth, so his lower jaw is so big that it extends well beyond his upper jaw, and it's just all these teeth sticking up. And he says, "Yes, my son, dearest Daniel, welcome home." And then it's like the ship, as it burns up in reentry, hits that illusion or whatever it is of Flegethanyar, and it explodes. So again, the implication, especially at the end of last issue, what have I done, is that in some way the actions or the choices that Daniel Lozano have chosen have, and again, he's been manipulated. It says he's been betrayed and didn't do it on purpose. But for whatever reason, somehow his actions have caused the Earth to be where they are right now. So as we turn the page, we're back in present time, and Lozano's talking. He's saying, "Bastard, I hear you. Stop laughing. I know it's not my fault. I know it was a setup." But again, we never go back to finding out exactly what happened. Meanwhile, Madrid and Matthew are trying to get away. And Matthew's asking, about what the hellspawn is. He goes, "What is it? It's not a nightmare. It's not a necro soldier." And she says, "I don't know, Matt. I've never seen one before. There's something familiar about him, though. I'm not sure." And Matt, again, he, maybe it's just the innocence of youth. He wants to trust this creature that just saved them. He goes, "But it saved our lives. Like a demon wouldn't do that, right?" And again, Madrid's like, just because first rule of survival, trust nothing. Just because it killed the desiccator doesn't mean it won't kill us. And meanwhile, Daniel's kind of recovered, and he's like, everything that was planned, everything you tricked me, and now the boy that was here that seemed familiar to me is gone. And once again, he has another flashback. So this time he is a teenager. We're told he's been in and out of juvenile detention centers his whole life, and he's being attacked by a crater gang. And again, it's kill or be killed, but he does get pretty brutal here. He takes out one of the other gangs. They're in their spacesuits. They can't breathe. And he cracks the guy's helmet open and kills him. So, Daniel Lozano's not exactly a nice guy, which I guess you sort of expect. If somebody's going to become a hellspawn, they're not exactly a nice guy. But he does catch up with the mother and the son, and he says, "Madrid, I stood my ground. I never gave up. The boy knows. He understands even more than you did." And Matthew's saying he's right. There's something about him, but Madrid's not having it. She's like, "Leave my son alone." She doesn't want to hear. She blasts him with the spinner gun, and maybe it's the fact that Daniel Lozano's new to his hellspawn powers. He takes it point blank. He's like curled up on the ground, not exactly in the best of shape, when he starts hearing all these voices talking to him. And it's never clear to me who exactly these voices are. I don't know if it's voices from people he's killed in the past or whatnot, but they definitely are bothering him. We'll say that. And he lashes out against them. And, they're, in a way, it seems like they have to be physical manifestations in some way, because, we're told that he rips off one of their heads with his chains. And then all of a sudden he is being attacked from all sides by these creatures, these demons. They're not exactly the necro soldiers we've seen before, but they don't seem to be any sort of creature that we've seen before, because we'll see later some beings that are supposedly the souls of deceased children, but these don't seem to be that either. But again, maybe it's just all in his head as he's fighting them off. And of course, this all leads to another flashback, which again, that's part of the reason why this is so hard to follow, because it's constantly flashing back. And we see that there was one time in his life where Daniel Lozano did feel connection to someone else. He got appointed a public defender when he was in prison, somebody named Noon, and ends up having a relationship with this girl, which, I mean, go Daniel, you're in prison and you managed to score with your lawyer. I guess got the charm going on. But of course, it is just a flashback, and she rots away in front of his eyes, and all these skulls pop out of the ground. And we see his master, just like Al Simmons has the master of Malbolgia. The master of Daniel Lozano is this Phlegathanyar, and he says, hey, it's just another casualty. This woman Noon, she's just another casualty of in the life of Daniel Lozano. You were a thief, you were a murderer, you're a monster, you're guilty on all those counts. So, I've turned you into something meaningful down here on the 12th level of hell, and you'll be my best hellspawn ever, and you're going to be my masterpiece, and we're depending on you to go out into the world and be, a powerful hellspawn. And much like Al Simmons in the main story is supposed to be killing people and causing chaos and doing all that and sending people down to be soldiers in the army of Malbolgia, Daniel Lozano is supposed to be doing something similar. And we're also introduced to this other creature called Abaddon, and he's another servant of Phlegathanyar, I guess kind of the future version of the Violator, but he's not so wacky and crazy. He's much more serious. But I guess you'd say he's one step above Daniel Lozano, this new hellspawn. So clearly there's relationship stuff that's going to go on there. Meanwhile, Madrid and Matthew have made their way or trying to make their way to a human encampment. They come across another cadre of necro soldiers. They manage to take them out, and then take the armored personnel carrier and use it as transportation. So again, Madrid just showing how resourceful she is. All right, haven't had enough new characters yet, because now we're going to be introduced to another new character, and this is one that I talked about before. So his name is Brune, and he's part bone, he's part flesh, he's part machine, and I'm never quite sure what exactly his role is. Like, is he a necro soldier? Does he work for Abaddon? Does he work for Phlegathanyar? Like, it's never really explained, but he's another faction, and he definitely commands some necro soldiers. And we're told that he has nanomites that spring forward and are constantly trying to put his skin back together as it's sloughing off. So he's another faction in this story, and one I feel a little superfluous, because he's never really explained that well, and I feel like he doesn't necessarily need to be there. But meanwhile, we check back in with the anti-pope. Now, the anti-pope has managed to capture one of the members of the human resistance, this guy named Abel. And Abel seems like he's pretty resigned to his fate. He's not going to give up any information to the anti-pope. He's not going to betray any of them. But they do some sort of ritual, pull out one of those knives that we've talked about before, like D'Angelo had with the golden hilt on it.
Oh, and, yeah, from the previous episode.
Yeah, exactly. And he slices open Abel, disembowels him basically, and then they prepare him for baptism, whatever the evil version of baptism is. So clearly they're doing something with Abel. And this is another part of the story that is never like fleshed out that well. Like he gets sent in as kind of a spy, but nothing really ever comes of it in a lot of ways. So not exactly sure what it was supposed to accomplish, but he is sewn back up now that he's basically going to be sent in as a sleeper agent. So meanwhile, high atop the ruins of the dying world, we're told 2 officers in Hell's great army gaze across the land. So we've got Abaddon here, and he's telling Daniel Lozano that we need to make them pay, no salvation, kill all the humans that are left, no reprieve, make them pay for the judgments and the suffering in the name of goodness. And Daniel Lozano is remembering back to his really tortured life and horrible existence that he had. And he says, yes, this is what humankind deserves. It will be my pleasure. And again, it ends on a really great final image there of Lozano, more of a finished look to him in terms of the blades that are sticking up and the spikes that are coming off of his shoulders. And yeah, just again, really, really great image from Dwayne Turner. So thoughts on this second part of the story here, Blake?
Not too many. Just that I believe it's supposed to be implied that the Boone character is not necessarily his own faction. I'm pretty sure it feels like he's working for the anti-pope, and I think the anti-pope is working for Phlegethanyar. It's kind of like a descending chain, and he's just like this elite soldier that he's sending in to take them out. That's kind of how I read it anyway. That the anti-pope is like the number 2, Phlegethanyar is the number 1, and that all these other named characters that are on the bad guy side, those are all sort of like lieutenants and generals, like Abaddon. But yeah, the introduction of this new character, Abel, there will be some conclusion to that. So don't feel like like it's a dangling thread. We will have answers to that at some point.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's great that McElroy is giving us such a big story and scope. But again, I just for the sake of simplicity, because this isn't an established world, I wonder if it might not have been simpler to not give it like Brune. To me, that was where it was just a step too far. I'm trying to keep all these guys straight. It just gets or maybe Abel or what have you. But yeah, I mean, maybe if it's in the Blood and Salvation where some of these storylines pay off, then yeah, that'll be fine. So anyway, part number 3, really cool cover from Dwayne Turner. Once again, you see picture of Daniel Lozano version of Spawn there, and clearly in torment, clearly suffering. And the name of the issue is Corpse Candles, which I found to be interesting as well. Same creative team, McElroy writing, Dwayne Turner on pencils, Danny Miki on inks, Orzechowski copy editor and letters, and then Todd Broeker and Roy Young on colors, with a special thanks to John Gordon. So, because there haven't been enough named characters, we do get introduced to one more here, and his name is Doro, and he finds Abel kind of wandering around in the ruins. So we know Abel has been compromised. Doro doesn't. They're clearly friends here. And I love the letter balloon. You can see it on YouTube, even though I redacted the words in the letter balloon. You can see the tail of the balloon, how it's kind of wavy and squiggly, which indicates that, yeah, something is not quite right with Abel. He has been baptized by the anti-pope, whatever that means, and sent back out to rejoin the humans as this sleeper agent, as I said. So on the next page, we get Boone, and here are those other creatures that I was talking about before. They're called Navkeys. They're the restless souls of murdered children, and they have arisen, and they're awaiting orders from their master, who is this Brune character. And again, you can see on the bottom panel there about how sort of machine-like Brune looks. It says it pulls back his hood, it reveals a ghastly entropic skull, and across his runneled countenance, tiny nanotech mites scurry to repair and reshape flaking and rotting skin. So yeah, he clearly could use a facial. You can see the bugs crawling on his forehead there. So really cool detail from Dwayne Turner. So Meanwhile, Spawn is trudging through the fields, killing whatever he comes across. Again, that talk that he had with Abaddon at the end of last issue. Supposedly he's out there to wipe out the last of humanity, to help usher in the final victory for the anti-pope. And clearly the humans are fighting back in the best way they can. Let's send this soulless devil back where he came from. And Daniel replying, want a piece of me, soldier? And we see him there using his symbiote, although a different sort of symbiote, like Blake was mentioning, to take out a bunch of these soldiers, ripping them apart with these cybarbs and what have you. And again, he's hearing these voices as in his head as all this stuff is happening. And he's thinking about how easy this comes. And Abaddon is there as well, saying, it's so nice to see, one of my proteges so happy in his work. Meanwhile, Madrid and Matt have reached the human settlement. They offer them the armored personnel carrier, which will help in the battle against the forces of evil if they can just have some food and water. And they say, well, we don't have much to spare, but we'll do what we can. And we're introduced to a couple of more named characters, a couple of members of the human resistance here, Civ and Fletchette. And again, very reminiscent of the ragtag nature of the human rebellion that we see in the Terminator movie. So you can't help but be reminded of that. So as these two new members of the rebellion show up, they take him to meet the leader of the rebellion. And we're told that this guy, he's their spiritual leader. His name's Mortimer. And as soon as he sees the boy, he senses something with his spiritual powers, I guess. He says, he knows you. The boy, you're his blood. We need to kill them both now. So again, we knew that there was some connection between Daniel Lozano and these two. And now it seems like in this third issue with this guy saying, you're his blood, that they're actually related in some way. So the other human soldiers are about to take him out, but there seems to be some reluctance. Like, why would we kill these guys? If we kill these guys, we're no better than the forces of evil. So there's some hesitancy. And while they're hesitating, we see Abel and Doro show up, and Abel's like, put your guns down. The woman and the boy are welcome here. So again, you wonder, okay, why? What's Abel's motivation? And no one seems to even notice that there are bugs crawling around on Abel, except for Matthew. So interesting that we know Abel is not all himself, and you would think they would notice his eyes are like glowing yellow, and he looks all gaunt and like desiccated and whatnot. But yeah, maybe they see what they want to see, but clearly something going on with Abel. So meanwhile, a bunch of these nav keys under the Order of Brune are headed to the human settlement. They found it. They say, oh, feast. They're very hungry. They feed on human flesh, and they have decided to attack. Meanwhile, back on the field of battle where the Daniel Lozano Spawn was fighting the human, he's just about done taking out all of the humans that are left when he comes across a woman and her kids. And once again, he is reminded of himself, his sister, and his mother when his dad was attacking. And we see the moment when, after Daniel killed his father, Daniel was taken away by these soldiers, wasn't allowed to even say goodbye or have any human contact. He was taken away for life to pay for killing his father, even though his father was this horrible person. And in that flash of memory, he's anguished. He screams out. He had made this promise to his sister as he was leaving that he wouldn't give up. That was his promise. So Danny promised me that you won't give up. And he remembers that promise. And so at the moment he's about to kill this mother and her two children, he makes a choice. And instead of taking out the humans, he turns on the soldiers. and he says, I promised her, and he uses his powers, and he actually saves the family. And then he looks at himself in the mirror in this reflection of water, and he's cursing Phlegothior, look at what you've made me, look at what you've made me do. And once again, he's tormented by anguish and by laughter. He's clearly tormented by the choices in his life that he's made. And he takes off his shroud, and he sees, much like Brune, he's not fully human anymore, but he's not just necroplasm either. He's some terrible hybrid of the two. He's got all kinds of what looks like technology and metal and whatnot, and he's cursing his existence. And meanwhile, the demon lord Phlegothior is saying, "This is your fault. You did this. Fires of apocalypse burning your bones. It's you, not me. You must use your power. There's no avoiding it. It's been your fate for centuries. So stop fighting me. Get with the program. Go finish what you're supposed to be doing. Go take out the rest of the soldiers." So when he gets the chance, he comes against some human soldiers again. He does attack one of the human soldiers, but he's fighting against that rebellion, and he does turn away from them and ends up attacking the necro soldiers again until there's none left. So he's made his choice. He's chosen his side, and he's doing his best to fight against the impulses to do evil, basically. So in the aftermath of that, we're told these demon locusts come to sort of clean up the battlefield. They're eating the dead and whatnot. And through that battlefield strides Abaddon, who also feeds off a lot of that with his different tendrils and whatnot. And he's looking for Daniel Lozano, and he finds him and he says, what's the meaning of this? Why did you turn against the necro soldiers? And Daniels was laying all his cards on the table. He says, I won't let you hurt them anymore. This isn't right. It's not right for us to kill them. They're flesh and blood. And Abaddon's like, flesh and blood? Like, what are you talking about, man? What do you mean it's not right? Like, nothing is right about this world. These self-serving, wretched excuses for humans, they're the ones that did this. They did this to their own world. They signed their own death warrant. It's too late to stop Armageddon. You need to follow your orders, basically. You can't save humanity. You can't save Madrid or her bastard son. The anti-pope has already sent their punishment, and by that you think that he must be referring to Abel. And so Abaddon's like, yeah, get with the program. The end has begun. This is the final battle, so do what you're told, basically. So Spawn goes running off now that he's heard that the anti-pope has sent the punishment for Madrid and this boy, because again, Daniel feels some sort of connection to them, and so he's very invested in saving them. So while he does that, Abaddon is talking to Phlegethonyor, saying, okay, the first test has begun, and Phlegethonyor is like, okay, great, we'll see what this is going to do for his destiny. Once Lozano has killed his sister and her vile issue, the real game can begin. So it's revealed that Madrid is the girl that we saw in the flashbacks, the girl that told Daniel, don't give up. And so obviously her son would be Daniel's nephew. So real interesting connection, clearly blood. I mean, you can't really get much closer than that. So will he give in? Will Daniel give in to his baser instincts? Will he succumb to evil? Will he continue to try to resist? Clearly he's powerful. And it's interesting that he's murdered so many necro soldiers, and still they're like, why have you done this? But you don't necessarily punish him. They're just like, yeah, go take out your sister. Not going to take out his sister. At least it doesn't appear that he will. But again, a lot of big reveals in this issue, but fast paced, and a lot of stuff goes on. A lot of different moving parts to keep straight. We're introduced to Boone. or get a better look at Boone, I guess you'd say. And we're introduced to Civ and Flechette and more to Muir. So yeah, that's what I was saying at the beginning. A lot of characters, a lot of moving parts in this story. So thoughts on this one, Blake?
I love all the art with Flynn Gethinyar. He's a very interesting demon. Like he's similar enough to what we've seen with Violator and Malbolgia, but different enough to be just his own powerful entity. Clearly a big demonic presence. And this is where most of the story really starts to kick in. Like the first two issues felt very much like, okay, we're building towards something, we're building towards something. But at the end of this one, we find out, oh, Madrid is his sister. Oh my, okay, the game has changed. Because does Daniel fully realize what's happening? Like he seemed to recognize Madrid before, but he also seemed to, still be kind of confused. So, like, is he going to be able to hold back from those violent instincts? I mean, he was slaughtering humanity in human soldiers not too long ago. So,
Yeah,
it's will he do the deed?
Yeah, the other thing that I'll say about the art is, I mean, there's so much detail. And like I said, it is a little bit of a monochromatic colored story, but you understand why, because it is, especially when it's flashback and it's future and it's supposed to be dark and whatnot. But man, I don't remember hearing about Dwayne Turner's work at this time on Curse of the Spawn, and I should have, because, I mean, look at that splash page where,
it's insane.
Yeah, that cape
it's so good.
Yeah, it's crazy. And when you look at the detail, I might complain about trying to keep track of all these different characters, but each of them is so unique and so different, but yet so detailed. Whether it's Daniel's face without his shroud on, or whether it's the close up on Abaddon, whether it's the close up on Brune, where he had those little nanites or whatever they were crawling on his forehead, the giant underjaw. Like, talk about an underbite from from the demon here. Just insane. So, all right, well, let's move on to the last issue. Again, really cool cover from Dwayne Turner, much simpler, but still tons of detail, with one of Daniel Lozano's hands bursting up out of the ground, and we see plenty of worms and desiccated flesh and whatnot. So looking inside the front cover, we get the credits: Alan McElroy on story, Dwayne Turner on pencils, Danny Miki on inks, Orzechowski editor and letters, and colors from Todd Broeker, Roy Young. Special thanks to Josh Gordon. So it starts off with a look at Flaguthinyar, and he's looking on as Daniel Lozano is letting nothing stand in his way as he heads toward the headquarters of the Human Rebellion, as he's trying to reach his sister and his nephew. And Flaguthinyar is actually trying to stop him, which I find to be interesting. Actually, is that Flaguthinyar? You know what? Now that I look at it, I thought before when I read this the first time that it was Flaguthinyar, but it's not. It's a daemon that Flaguthinyar has sent after him, right? Because he doesn't have the giant underbite. Yeah. So this is just a demon that Flaguthinyar has sent after Daniel Lozano to stop him. And as they're fighting, the dead earth gives way from underneath them. This daemon that Daniel's fighting is much larger than him, kind of has the upper hand. And what Daniel does in order to try to even the playing field is he fires his weapon and destroys an ancient wall, and allows this aqueduct to sort of release this putrid torrent of blood, water, and corpse brine, the tears of humanity shed and quickly forgotten. And it washes them away to kind of separate them, and then he fires up into the ceiling and has this whole entire cavern collapse on this demon that Flaguthinyar had sent after him, which I find to be interesting. Doesn't 100% make sense, because at the end of last issue, it was Phlegethanyar and Abaddon saying, okay, he's going to go to take his sister. We'll see what happens. But maybe on his way there, because he was taking out so many Necro soldiers, maybe that's when Phlegethanyar decided, or maybe it wasn't even a Phlegethanyar. Maybe it was just another officer in the Hell Army on the battlefield that's like, hey, who's this guy taking out all our soldiers? We need to stop him. Let's send this powerful demon against him. But clearly it was unsuccessful. Daniel's able to take out this daemon, and we hear about all these boiling rats that come out after and start chewing on it, and that cycle of evil that we've seen in the regular issues of Spawn plenty. So meanwhile, at the headquarters of the rebellion, Madrid and Matthew are feeding, having a chance to eat, and Matt rather, once again notices this Abel guy creeping around in the shadows, looking at him, and he has hunger in his eyes, and Matthew knows there's something not quite right with this guy who's watching them, but he's not sure what it is. And then at that moment, the nav keys that we saw last issue that were about to attack breach their defenses and make their way into the headquarters. Madrid sends Matthew away. He says, go to the auditorium, hide there, I'll find you. And we see that there are some other children waiting there in the auditorium as well. Meanwhile, I can't remember what the leader's name, Mastamuro, I think is his name. He is there hiding. He is there hiding as well. And he's yelling at Matthew saying, it's your fault. You're the one that brought all these evil people here. And because of that, Matthew goes to kind of hide in the shadows when he's grabbed from behind. And we see it's Abel finally making his move. And when somebody confronts Abel about it, he backhands them and takes out their eyes with these giant spiked claws that he has. Again, like, this guy does not look normal. If you knew Abel from before and there's so few humans, why did nobody go, dude, why are your hands like claws? Why are your eyes glowing now? Why are you, I mean, you were gone for a long time. You think these humans that are left would be used to betrayal and magic and that kind of stuff. But anyway, I guess it wouldn't suit the story. So back in the main room where the battle's taking place, the forces of the humans are overwhelmed, and they're about to kill Madrid. We're told, but this time death has finally run her down, and she's about to scream when Daniel shows up and rescues her. So keep in mind, he doesn't know at this point that it's his sister. He just knows, he feels the connection to her, and he takes out all the nav keys. He uses his powers and turns them into some sort of gas, and they're released into the echosphere, we are told. And once that happens, the person that had their eyes gouged out comes stumbling in the room saying, Abel took my eyes, he took the boy. And obviously Madrid is very distraught, and Spawn says, well, I'll bring him back. They want hell on earth good because it's coming. And Madrid's like, no, wait, let me, like, help me. And she turns to the rest of the humans, says, help me come rescue my son. And Masmuro's like, no, your boy, the creature, you brought hell on us. So just go, get out of here. And Civ and Farshette are like, well, hold on a second. If this isn't what we're fighting for, to save people from the forces of evil, then what are we fighting for? You're just going to turn these people out. So Madrid, along with Civ and Flechette, they decide to join up along with Spawn, and they go following Spawn, who didn't wait, and he went tearing off across the scorched deadlands. So they follow his trail. And where the trail leads to is this place called the Tower, which we're told is a cancerous tumor spike spewed from hell's acidic depths. And as this Abel creature is carrying him and climbing up this tower, he gets attacked by, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's Boone, right? But I'm not sure why.
I'm pretty sure it's Boone. It's got the same aesthetic and everything as him from the previous issues.
Yeah, so as Spawn shows up to follow, Boone attacks him and says, "You bastard! You slaughtered all of my children." And there's a pretty brutal fight between the two of them. Um, but eventually, Spawn, with his superior abilities and superior power, kills Boone and just says, "Burn." And we're told that Boone's screams are unending as he continues on toward the tower. So the other humans are following along as well, taking out wolves and whatever they can along the way. As Abel's climbing up the side of the tower to take Matthew to the top, Matthew grabs a bone. This tower is made out of human bones. Matthew grabs a bone from the side of the tower and stabs Abel in the neck, which actually causes Abel to release them. So if Spawn at that moment could just catch him, all would be good. But it's not to be, and instead the tower itself reaches out and catches Matthew and then passes him up the tower. Which, if the tower could do that, why didn't Abel just give him to the tower and have him pass it up in the first place? Because he gets to the top really, really quick, much faster than Abel can get him up there. And Abaddon is waiting at the top, saying, "Hello, Matthew." Once Matthew gets to the top,
it's all for the drama.
Yeah, all for the drama. So meanwhile, Spawn sensing that, it's like, "Not the boy. You can't have him." And he appears over the side of the tower. And Abaddon is like, "What do you want to save this guy for? Let's just kill him. Let's take his life now. His soul will go to heaven. And of course, if you kill this boy, it will seal your fate forever. And the choice is up to you. So heaven or hell, which will it be?" And Abaddon, again, he knows that this boy is related to Daniel. So again, Abaddon, it's never quite clear. At the end of last issue, it wasn't clear why they decided to trust Daniel, that he was going to go and kill his sister. And here it's not quite clear either. I think in a way, the way I read it, but I'm not sure if I'm right, is that Abaddon is like, okay, either way we win. Like, if Daniel kills this boy, then he is damned forever. He can never come back from that. And if he doesn't, the torment and the anguish of it will be a punishment, basically. So,
yeah. But he either kills him now and kind of saves Matthew from whatever tortures hell's going to put on him, or he lets him live, and then Matthew's got to suffer through everything that hell's going to put him through. So it's a lose-lose situation for Daniel in this particular scenario.
Yeah, but Daniel has learned a little bit about his powers that we didn't realize that he knew about. And he tells Matthew, "Close your eyes and think about the place where you'd most like to be. Think real hard." And then he wraps Daniel up in his power and he teleports him, like we've seen Spawns do before. And obviously this just shocks Abaddon. He's like, how do you know how to do that, you traitorous bastard? So then he orders all his minions to kill Daniel. Daniel rips off all the tentacles from Abaddon, and there's a pretty brutal fight between these different hell spawns. With Daniel saying, "You want my anger, you want my rage, you want my darkness, you want to see the black fire of my soul." Like Daniel has been through a lot. Like, we say Al Simmons is a tortured soul. Al Simmons has nothing on Daniel Lozano. Lozano's been through just an amazing amount of pain and abuse and whatnot in his life. And so he kind of releases all his energy, or what I assume is all his energy, all that blackness, all that angst, all that abuse and terror and anger and hate that he's had piled on him his whole life. And we're told that he screams from the bowels of his shattered being, which I really love that line from McElroy. And Abaddon screams, and he feels something that he has never felt before in the eternity that he's been alive. He feels fear. And then Daniel unleashes all of his power, this deluge of dark light energy, and it goes off in this huge explosion that's like a mushroom cloud, a power of hell churning in the depths like a nuclear furnace. And the resulting dark blast leaves necroflames and a crater sea of boiling tar 20 miles an hour that will never cool. again, a really cool visual there that Daniel's able to do by releasing all that torment. So you think at that point, okay, well, that's the end of Abaddon, and that's probably the end of Daniel as well. But kind of reflecting what we saw on the cover, these humans, Matt and Civ and Fletchett and Madden, or Madrid rather, who have survived, and they're thinking Matt is saved because he materializes where he Spawn had told him, think about the place that you most want to be. That was next to his mother's side. So they have been reunited. And as they look on at this explosion and all the fallout and whatnot, it's a crucial battle that's over, but Daniel has survived. And that was the cover. The hand coming up out of the ground was Daniel surviving that blast. And the last line is, but for Daniel Lozano, hellspawn, the war for his soul and the soul of humanity is just beginning. So he survived that blast. He didn't use all his energy. And maybe Abaddon survived as well. We don't know, but a really cool ending. And again, those Terminator influences with a big, nuclear blast ending the story. So yeah, really, really fun story. Again, I think could have maybe been done a little simpler. Don't know that we needed Abel. I mean, I get that they used him to transport Matt from one place to another. I feel like they could have used Brune to do that, or just some nameless soldier, necro soldier, or what have you. But all in all, it's an enjoyable story.
When we were talking beforehand about before we started this episode, you had mentioned the Terminator thing, and then we started going through this episode. I started seeing all those connections. Like when I read it the first time, I don't think I made that connection. Like, oh yeah, this is post-apocalyptic. It's got that sort of future Terminator feel. It didn't really cross my mind too much then. But now that I'm like going through this whole thing with you and seeing it in that light, it's so obvious. Abel is absolutely like the infiltrator Terminators. He's the enemy, but he looks, like your friend. And all the humans, it's definitely got that ragtag, disheveled look. Like they're just, being held together by like scraps and patches. Like they've got nothing, but they're hanging on for dear life. And the whole post-apocalypse, it just screams Terminator. And the necro soldiers, everything's also sort of bionic. I mean, even when we got to see Daniel's face, it was not entirely organic or necroplasm. It was semi-technological. So it's very interesting looking at it in that light, that it was kind of, it was probably inspired by Terminator. And this is coming off the heels, like it's only a couple of years after Judgment Day, the second Terminator movie released. So it's very possible, very, very likely that it was a inspiration for this arc.
Yeah, December 1996. I think the Terminator movie was in 92, I want to say, Terminator 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a few years after. And I mean, Madrid being a female character, being very, strong and capable with weapons, just like Sarah Connor, protecting her son, just like Sarah Connor.
Her son.
So yeah, I mean, it's not 100% on the nose, and but clearly inspired by, and it's its own thing, and it is interesting. And I read it before, but going through doing the recap, I did enjoy it more going through doing the recap than I did the first time, because again, it's so dense. I think it's one of those arcs where you owe it to yourself, especially if you're going to spend money to buy it, even if it's digitally or whatever. Like give it a couple, give it a 2 or 3 reads. It doesn't have to be all within a close period of time, but I think you get more out of it the second read, and probably a third read I'll get even a little bit more. So yeah, it's interesting world building and whatnot, and it does kind of show how flexible a lot of the ideas that McFarlane created with Spawn are. because
Mm-hmm.
this is, like you said at the beginning when we first started talking about this, set so far in the future to the point where, yeah, maybe you have to think of it like we think about a lot of comic book futures now. This is a possible future that could come to be. It don't necessarily think of this as canon. This is 100% written in stone for the future of the Spawn universe. But look what the the basic ideas and basic concepts that McFarlane came up with. Look at how they can be applied to other kind of stories. And one last thing I'll say about this is we have talked about, especially in recent episodes, doing the quote unquote cosmic stuff, how it feels like it hasn't melded well together with the urban horror, with the space stuff. It hasn't, that sci-fi feel of the space stuff hasn't melded well with the urban horror that feels so different in tone and whatnot. Here we have a story that, both of us are pretty sure is inspired by one of the best sci-fi films or franchises, Terminator. But this does meld that idea of sci-fi really well with the supernatural and the horror and whatnot. It does a fantastic job. At no point when I'm reading this did I feel like it wasn't a sci-fi story. At no point when I was reading it did I feel like it wasn't a horror story. At no point did I feel like it wasn't a Spawn story. And sometimes I get those feelings with the Angela stories or the Abdil two-parter that we did recently, because they just don't mesh well together. McElroy did a great job here in this first arc, and it's too bad that other stuff doesn't have the same kind of feel. And I think it's the horror aspect of it that pushes them together, that pushes those ideas together. And I think that's what's missing. And maybe it's because those stories that we've had before with Abdil and with Angela, they're stories about the heaven side of things rather than the hell side of things. Mm-hmm. So inherently, you don't necessarily get the horror aspect of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Another thing that I kind of noticed this time through reading was if Daniel is to Al Simmons, obviously they're both hellspawn, then Matthew is kind of like the Cyan of this story. He's the child in the story that is a little more aware of things, even more so than the parents. And Madrid is kind of like Wanda or Terry or something. You've got that emotional core where ultimately this is a story about family, trying to reconnect with each other. And Daniel's trying to, kind of protect them in this very scary situation. And he doesn't know the best way to do that.
Yeah, that's a good call. I didn't think about that, but yeah, definitely. He definitely, Matt definitely feels a connection to the Spawn right from when he first shows up. And yeah, that's definitely similar to what Cyan is feeling now. So so a really, really fun 4-issue arc. I look forward to reading Blood and Salvation, because Blake has let me know that some of this stuff that I'm not sure about kind of ties up in that one shot. So we'll cover that on the next episode. Any last thoughts on this issue before we call it, Blake?
No, not really. This is one of my favorites just because it's so different. It's so different from things that we've seen before. And I just love the idea of taking all the concepts that make a good Spawn story and just slapping it into a post-apocalypse. It's like, this works. It works. Like you were saying, it is a lot of information up front. It feels like the whole first 2 issues of this arc is just set up. But then all the payoff is in those second 2 issues where it's like, okay, we're moving forward. Action's happening. Okay, he's making a critical, choice here. It's an action-packed second half of the arc, but it's a lot of front loading, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm curious of what Todd's thoughts were. Like what made you? Did he just say, okay, I need a second monthly Spawn book, so I'm going to do Curse of the Spawn, or did Alan McElroy have this idea? Like it's like that. The background is something I'll be interested in talking to Todd about. So we'll see if we can make that happen. I I keep saying that. I have nothing concrete, but hopefully we'll make it happen, everybody. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Exactly. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. Once again, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, next time we'll be talking about the one shot. I think it's a 60-page one shot, Spawn, Blood and Salvation. Don't forget, if you want to know what's coming up next, especially if you just maybe want to tune in for the issues of the regular series, just go and check out the reading order. We're following that, and that's how stuff will be released. So go and check it out. There's a link in the show notes. So we appreciate you guys joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Later.